What do you think of using Dshot1200 or greater? Is there a benefit? Asks Jose Diaz. Thank you for a $5 super chat, Jose. Well, Jose, I defer to people who are smarter than me on this one, and it turns out they don't agree, so I don't have a definitive answer for you. The Betaflight devs argue that there is no real benefit to running Dshot any faster than the PID loop. So for a 4K PID loop, you run Dshot300 because that's the smallest Dshot that will fit within the PID loop time. Okay? They would say that if you go to Dshot600, then the Dshot signal finishes transmitting, and then you just sit around waiting for the PID loop to finish. I'm sorry, back up. If you're on 4K PID loop with Dshot600, was that clear? Did I make that clear? The 4K PID loop is going to take this long to finish, and the Dshot600 is going to finish in this fast, and then there's just nothing to do. And they're like, the Dshot600 packet will be more prone to interference and corruption. That's a fact. That's not debated. And so the Betaflight devs argument is, if you're running Dshot400, if you're running at 4K PID loop, then run Dshot300, which is short enough to fit within that spacing, that timing, but no shorter. And that gives you the most robust signal. The KISS developers, like Alexander Fedorov, I believe is who makes this argument, his argument is that and I think the FetTech developers make the argument too, because they're all about the high Dshot. Their argument is that the faster you get the motor signal out, the less latency there will be between the stick movement and the motor changing. They're not wrong. That is a fact. Because if you think about the control, end-to-end control loop, I move the stick. The signal of the stick is transmitted to the receiver. The receiver sends it to the flight controller. The flight controller reads it. The PID loop calculates what needs to happen. The PID loop outputs a motor signal, and that motor signal goes to the ESC, which then changes the speed of the motor. And so anything we do to remove latency from any of those steps will reduce the end-to-end latency of the control link between the movement of the stick and the movement of the quadcopter. So the KISS developers argue that you should use the highest Dshot that you can get away with because that reduces the latency, and they're right. The Betaflight developers argue that that difference in latency is pointless, that no one can feel it anyway, and by going to a higher Dshot, you are increasing the corruption of packets, and those corrupted packets actually cause more problems than the increased latency. And they're right about the facts. They're right that the slower Dshot signal is less prone to corruption, and that Dshot1200, Dshot2400 are more prone to corruption. Whether that's something you can feel, the difference in latency versus the difference in corrupted packets, that's something that I don't think there's a definitive answer for. So you would need a test. You would need a test to say how many corrupted packets are getting to the ESC at Dshot1200 or Dshot2400. What percent of those packets are corrupted? And that answer is going to vary from person to person and from quad to quad. Some quads will have more electrical noise, some will have less. And then the other question is, how much difference is there in latency, and does that actually affect the PID loop and the pilot? Like, someone knows this, I don't know this off the top of my head. What's the difference in latency between Dshot, 2400, 1200, 600, 300, and 150? Someone link me to a chart that shows that, because I don't know, but I bet it's out there. Going back to the question about Dshot, Tiago Ramos, thank you for these numbers. Tiago Ramos has the numbers for latency. Of the different protocols. Hang on one second. This is from Oscar Liang. Well, that's Dshot600. What about, but Tiago, what about Dshot1200? I guess Tiago doesn't have that. I guess Oscar doesn't have that. So here are, oh, that's not right. Here are our latencies. Oh man, some people are so mad we use U for micro. We don't really care about one shot. Nobody uses one shot or multi-shot anymore. So I see a pattern here that it's about half, 106, 53, 26. So by extension, Dshot1200 is going to be 26.7 divided by 2 is 13.35. And Dshot2400 is going to be 6.675. That. The other thing I want to point out is that if you're using FETTEX one wire, then the motor output is sent serially one after the other, and the latency of motor number 4, for example, is going to be higher than motor number 1. Whereas if you're using parallel D-shot, like most people are, the motor signals go out at the same time and all the motors have the same latency. I would say that the difference between Dshot600 and 1200, a difference of 13, is that microseconds? Wait. Is that microseconds or milliseconds? Oh, golly, I got to get that right. That's microseconds. Who gives a flip? Okay, hang on. This is what... D-shot. ESC protocol speed comparison. Dshot1200. Blah, blah, blah. Where's the... Damn it. That's microseconds. Okay, I take it all back. Doesn't matter. It does not matter at all. Doesn't matter. If it was milliseconds, it totally would matter. I didn't realize it was microseconds difference. I haven't looked at this in a while. I looked at this stuff way back when D-shot first came out, and I was like, oh, interesting. And then I forgot all about it, and I just started using D-shot. Are we sure it's microseconds? I mean, Oscar probably got it right. This is all sub-millisecond latency. It's irrelevant. That's my official opinion. Assuming it's microseconds. Yeah, there's no way it's milliseconds. If there was 106 milliseconds latency on the motor output, the quad wouldn't fly. So these numbers are microseconds, and I officially agree with the Betaflight devs. Shocker. The KISS argument, and I apologize if I'm like misrepresenting this in some way, but my understanding is that the KISS argument for the higher D-shot is that decreased latency means the motor gets the signal, or the ESC gets the signal sooner. That is true. If you're using Dshot1200, the ESC will receive the end of the motor packet 13.35 microseconds faster than if you're using Dshot600. I don't see any world in which the difference of 13 microseconds could possibly affect anything meaningful. Sorry. 6.66 microseconds to D-shot. However, I absolutely do guarantee you that the increased packet corruption with Dshot1200 or 2400 in some cases will be noticeable and make a difference. I'm skeptical that there are any cases. If there are, they're very rare, where a 6 or 13 microsecond difference in timing is going to make a difference to anything measurable. That's my take. Okay, so I agree with the Betaflight devs on this one. Run Dshot300 if you're running at 4K or if you have a BMI gyro at 3.6K. Run Dshot600 if you're running at 8K, and that's the end of the day. That's the end of that, in my opinion. Robert Leclerc says, why does it sound so much smoother when you pump up Dshot to 2400? Well, Robert Leclerc, the first thing I would do if there's a claim is I would test the claim. I would want to do blind testing of motors at 2400, 1200, 600. Maybe we just pick two of them as like a rough A/B test. We're going to set the ESC to Dshot300 and Dshot1200 or 2400, and we're going to record the motors, and we're going to play them for you, and we're not going to tell you which is which, and we're going to see if you can pick it. So I'm not saying that you can't, but I am saying that there is a lot of placebo effect out there in the world in general. And whenever somebody makes a claim, my first thought is, can we substantiate that claim, or do we need to validate it before we move forward? So you're making an assertion here. And if we're going to accept that assertion as true for the sake of our argument, and then we're going to try to answer the question, why does it sound so much smoother on Dshot2400? If we accept that as true before we establish that it's true, then we're wasting our time. Also, if it does sound smoother, you would have to make an argument as to why the difference of 13 microseconds is resulting in smoother sounding motors. For example, what flight controller or ESC was it? Damn. I can't remember. It's a long time ago. There was an ESC or a flight controller that everybody said how smooth it flew. And then later it turned out it was just over-filtered. It was hyper-filtered. And it was smooth because it was non-responsive. I'm like, oh, well, of course it is. So we need to establish that. And I think there's a lot of steps there. The simplest test you can perform when you're trying to establish a hypothesis is an ABXY test. Or just an AB. Is it ABXY? ABXY testing would be, I'm going to play you recordings and you tell me if it's Dshot300 or Dshot600. We could even do a much simpler test, a basic AB test, where I'm going to play you two recordings and you tell me if you think they're the same or different. That's the most basic test you can do. And if you can't pass that test, then you can't do anything. Now, ZFPV says, going from Betaflight Dshot600 to KISS Dshot2400, there is a remarkable difference. Absolutely. But, of course, you've changed a lot of variables. You haven't just changed the D-shot. I would bet you that going from Betaflight's Dshot600 to KISS Dshot600, there's a remarkable difference. KISS has a completely different filtering structure, completely different defaults, and we know that filtering dramatically changes the smoothness of the motors, both with props on and in flight and on the bench. So what we would need to do is we would need to have a KISS flight controller. The other thing is that KISS may be doing something else where it benefits from Dshot2400, but that it's not actually the lower latency of the signal that's the cause of the benefit. It's very difficult to answer this question. I will stand by this, though. 13 microseconds of difference in latency from the flight controller to the motor is not detectable by humans. You could not possibly tell the difference. If you can tell the difference between Dshot2400 or Dshot1200 and Dshot600, it's not because of the latency. It's something else that's going on. Okay. For example, ZFPV says the adaptive filter in KISS was designed around Dshot2400. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know what the interaction is there.